A unique game. Writer, Wasim Aqeel Shah. Translation, Ghulam Mohammed Ansari. He was sitting in the back seat of his taxi, lost, engrossed in deep thought. Disappointment and hopelessness were clearly visible on his face. After every 5 minutes he was looking at his mobile phone and was more worried. Today, the day was about to end. Until now only 450 rupees were left in his pocket. Even if he doesn't give his mother 150 Indian rupees today, will he be able to spend Saturday evening with these few hundred rupees? And so now. Once again, Sonal's attractive charm overwhelmed on his senses. Just the thought of Sonal ignited sexual fire in his entire body and he seemed to be uncontrollable. But the next moment, Sonal's romantic words would trigger deep waves of satisfaction and expansion in him. He was also sighing as he thought about the moments that had happened this evening. And he was getting anxious that somehow the rupees would be arranged. That was the first time for both of them in a year. When they were about to meet after a long period of a whole month. He looked out the window, the shadows were moving towards the east and the sun reflected off the concrete road and was still slapping. A large number of people were standing across the road from the bus stand and at some distance from the bus stand. Most of them were waiting for buses and some were waiting for their booked vehicles. Except for those who were there. Even those people were not expected to ride in his cab. What to do? Nowadays every man is convenience-oriented. Maybe that's what he thought. And then he thought that now I ask someone to borrow rupees. So he got out of the taxi and started looking for his stand-up friend Yogesh. He also had hope from Yogesh because Yogesh is into online trading. He earns something by investing a little every day. Yogesh's car was probably parked at number 15. But there was no address or whereabouts of Yogesh. He was further disappointed not to find Yogesh. He guessed. He may be standing in a Wi-Fi zone. And will not return to the stand for at least 2 hours. Why not start driving a sharing taxi? He said as if to himself. For this problem, it is better to drive a sharing taxi. At least there will be no more days of having to borrow money from others to take a girlfriend on a date. He used to drive a sharing taxi earlier too. Sonal was then working at Modern World Mall. Often at 8:30 in the morning, she would come to the Fulewada stand and get into a taxi parked at the number. Whenever she rode in his cab, in the mirror, the eyes of both collided again and again. Then when their love crossed the fiery moments of loneliness, it was not known. At the same time, this destination was also to come. And that destination has arrived. But should he start driving a sharing taxi again? Shaking his head, he dismissed Yogesh's thought and approached the 7 or 8 taxi drivers standing in a circle at a short distance. Here the discussion on the failure of Chandriyang broke out. He believed that the hair of these taxi drivers' heads turned grey at the same taxi stand, but the vehicle of their lives have not moved a step and they are talking about walking on the moon. Such discussions were very interesting for him and as always, today he would definitely participate in this discussion. But today only Sonal was riding on his entire existence. However, he seriously felt that he should not disturb anyone by telling his confusion. So he left there. As soon as he turned around, he saw Shakil, who was listening to some religious discourse with headphones in his ears. He did not think it proper to disturb Shakil either. Yes, Saurabh Dada could have loaned him 2,500 rupees, but just yesterday he received an online challenge slip in his mail. Inevitably, he returned to his taxi. Then he saw a young man walking down the road with his hand on the waist of a beautiful girl wrapped in mak. Suddenly he remembered that today's hotel table is also booked. Sonal herself had booked online. How expensive is the hotel? How expensive the hotel is. He pursed his lips and thought. She is a mall girl, a resident of Rama Baishal. She earns 12,000, such a pretense. A choice of branded clothes, an iPhone with a smartphone, not particularly well educated, but spoke English fluently. And clever enough to order a purse from his credit card by saying words like Shona, baby, Janu, etc. Sometimes a sandal, sometimes something. The last time Poonam's residency room was also booked by Sonal in the same way. Sometimes he would ask himself why he is so fond of Sonal. Will he marry her? When he learnt that apart from Stand, his other friends also think that he is going to marry Sonal. Then he reconciled with himself and thought that now there is enough room for him to marry Sonal. But he was also aware of this fact that if Muskan had not left her job and sat on the internet from her room, he would have been lying on her doorstep by now, and then mood of this mall girl Sonal. Whether he should marry Sonal or not, but he was obsessed with spending the entire evening with Sonal. He once again pulled himself out of the world of thoughts and frantically checked the time on his mobile phone. He had a good idea of Sonal's moods. In case of not arriving on time, she will definitely show displeasure. He looked ahead. Only 3 or 4 taxis moved in an hour. Still his number was far behind. He gave up the idea of borrowing rupees from anyone and after some thought took a taxi from the queue and walked towards home. He parked the taxi far before Mangala Chawl and entered one of the series of narrow alleyways. His house was in the middle of this very narrow street of two-sided houses. Outside the door, mother was washing the dishes and father was getting ready to leave for his night watchman duty. In his house, anything but the rays of the cell phone tower seemed difficult to reach. Even if there is wind and light, it is as if the ill-fated daughters persecuted by the in-laws have come home in a defeated state. He took off his uniform and put on his favorite navy bottoms and red t-shirt, spiked with hair gel. Then, spritzing on perfume, putting on shoes and avoiding dirt, he left the street. As he approached the taxi, two half-naked children came out in front of him with their arms outstretched. So seeing them, he handed 2 5-rupee coins in their dirty hands. Then started the car and started walking. Just before reaching the main road, he stopped the taxi on a side and also bought a large chocolate, mouth freshener and 2 small packets of different flavors from the New Moon Super Shop on the left. The hookah parlor was also here. From there he took his favorite flavor for his e-cigarette. Although in his mind the whole plan was complete till the climax. But in his frenzy he was repeating the details again and again. However, there was a feeling in his heart that he had asked his mother for 2,000 rupees by saying that he was giving these rupees to his friend as a loan to get his friend's father to have a biopsy. Mother, after a little hesitation, took out good and bad 50 and 100 rupee notes from the big iron box and after counting carefully, gave him 2,000 rupees. 20 minutes later he was at a clean table in the Victory Hotel. He was half an hour late. He thought that Sonal must be sitting here waiting for him impatiently. But Sonal was not there. Now he had to wait. He was happy thinking that Sonal was late today. He smiled and ordered the waiter a cup of lemon tea and busied himself surveying the tables around him. When Sonal did not come even after half an hour, she became anxious. So far he had called her more than 25 times, but Sonal did not receive the call but hung up several times. Another half hour passed. She must have come and gone. He scolded himself angrily and left the hotel after waiting for some time. He tried to find Sonal one last time by glancing around the hotel, left and right, before getting into the cab. But his gaze returned disappointed. The dense darkness of the evening was slowly absorbed into the light of the city. The traffic was slowly increasing with the screeching sounds of the vehicles. Inevitably, he started the taxi and drove off. After driving for about 2 kilometers, he saw Sonal's shadow on the left side by the Rit ice cream located on the first floor of Regal Multiplex Cinema. He thought he was Sonal. But she is probably sitting with a guy. There was an earthquake inside him. He took a long detour to cover the short distance and quickly arrived in front of Rit ice cream. But he was surprised not to see Sonal there. He got up from his seat and looked around the table, on which he suspected that Sonal was sitting. All the tables in the passage were engaged. People sitting on them were talking and enjoying ice cream. The waiters were walking around with order machines in their hands. Well, there was a lot of activity, but Sonal was not there. He cast a wistful glance at the digital screen board on the wall of the passage, on which different flavors of ice cream were scrolling while blinking. Then he started the taxi and without taking a turn he drove his taxi into the traffic, where numerous vehicles were flowing in one direction in the form of a flood.
हमारे चैनल मध्य भारत टाइम्स को सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल आइकॉन दबाना न भूलें।